Hey, it's Marty.
With Quinton. So Marty's already got this video already pre-recorded, and he did the video. This was supposed to be my day, but Marty took over for that because I was off to a college at Briarcrest there for the weekend here. I was gone for about 3 days, so didn't really have a lot of time to record a video.
So I filled in for him while he was gone, and then the video that I did was Windows 7 vs Windows 10.
Which we're going to show you that video in a little bit here. And I just wanted to mention that with college life, programmers are already well adapted to it, because most programmers spend most of the night up programming, and they live off of three to 4 hours of sleep. So that's pretty much what you get with college life. You know, you've got guys coming in all night long, and most of them come in at 3-4 in the morning, and then they sleep until 10. So, you know, we're already well adapted. I just wanted to mention that if you're not interested in a Windows 10 or 7, and if you just want to ditch the whole Windows thing, Linux Mint and Ubuntu are very viable choices.
Now, I personally prefer Linux Mint because it looks very similar to Windows, so it's everything you can find your way around pretty easily.
And Ubuntu is looks kind of more like the Mac OS, but it's a very stable system. Like, so far I've had no complaints with it.
I've been with Linux Mint for about 3 months now, and I haven't had a single issue yet that was Linux Mint's fault.
So there might be a couple of reasons why you go with one or the other. Sometimes it's simple hardware configuration. Certain OSs can't properly configure to a certain hardware setup. Just want to keep that in mind when playing with operating systems and stuff like that. So the last thing that I want to say is that Marty's going to be more taking over the channel here. You're probably going to be seeing less of me as I'm working towards getting my GED. So I've got a lot of studying to do there. Probably won't be seeing as much of me as you have been. You'll be more seeing this guy here. So enjoy.
Basically, what we're going to do is we're going to go through this little list here of the 10 most important aspects of any operating system. Based on that, we're going to give each operating system a score of 1 to 10, based on how well they do for each. Let's start at number 1 with cost. The cost difference from Windows 7 to Windows 10 is pretty much the same. I mean, for like $150, you used to be able to pick up a Windows 7 home, and now for about the same price, you can get a Windows 10 home. Now, for the cost, I would grade it definitely probably a 5 out of 10, considering that there is open source and free alternatives, such as Linux, for example. And plus, it doesn't really cost Microsoft very much to create a new product of Windows, any Windows, really. It costs them maybe like $20 for it to make the CD and whatnot. But that's why cost is pretty low down on the list, because it's not really that important in any operating system. 2, the user interface. Now, if you asked me about user interface about 2 years ago, I'd probably say that that's what makes or breaks the operating system. But that was also before I wasn't very geeky and I didn't encounter the horrors of the wonderful experience that Windows 10 has taught me. I mean, I had seen Windows 8, and I mean, you adapt to any user interface you can adapt to. But Windows 8, I definitely didn't really like that. It was kind of hard. It took a while to figure it out. But with Windows 7, in my mind, this is probably the best user interface that Microsoft has ever done. It actually feels everything has a nice, sleek, clean look, and it feels like everything's glass. There's tons of fancy effects everywhere. So, for example, let's see if we can just delete a file. Let's go to well, if you delete more stuff, if you move stuff, there's actually tons of cool animations. I wish I could show you one, but I just don't have really anything that's big. And my computer seems to be going really fast, so it doesn't even need to that. So, the look and user interface of Windows 7 definitely gets a 10 out of 10. No complaints here. Okay, so you see I've booted now over to Windows 10. And actually a bit of a funny story here. So just trying to boot up to Windows 10, in the 5 minutes that I've been doing this, I've already had 2 problems. One, I was trying to update as soon as I booted up. But luckily, last time I've gotten used to just having to disable my internet every time I leave Windows 10. And also what happened is that my USB locked up and I couldn't use it on my Linux anymore. So I had to reboot with Windows 7. So in the short period of time of just trying to do this video, already had 2 issues right there. Anyway, so the user interface on Windows 10, the user interface to me is not that important element. You can get around okay, and pretty much everything behaves how you want it to. You can customize the color, all that stuff, except, I wonder if I can. Last time I left this, I was deactivated. Yeah, of course, I'm deactivated. And why that is because I installed a new graphics card. So Microsoft thinks I need to buy a new product key because I upgraded my PC. So yeah, anyway, if you don't upgrade your PC, you might be able to edit all this fun looking stuff. So now it's just stuck like this with a nice green color. So you can get that green. I think the main theme that Microsoft's pushing for here is gray, because the default theme is all gray. If you actually go to Microsoft Edge, just open it up a second if it can even open, you can see it's just full screen all gray, which I don't know, that seems to be what Google's doing with YouTube, so I don't know. Not really a huge fan of the plain and simple Metro. There is something to be desired. It does kind of have a flat look, but like I said, user interface isn't that important, so I'd give it an 8 out of 10, simply because, I don't know, maybe this is just really preference. You could grade that really however you like it. Some people say they love the user interface of Windows 10, while other people just aren't really a fan, and they just see it as not really important aspect of an operating system, which I agree. The user interface isn't really what makes or breaks the OS. Install and reset. So this is the amount of time it takes to actually do the install or the reinstall. With Windows 7, it takes about in an hour you can have it reinstalled. So from there, no complaints here. I mean, anything under 2 hours in my mind is pretty good in my book stat. So I'd give that 10 out of 10. Windows 10, on the other hand, it can take from, well, that can be an all-day process. In fact, you could probably make a profession out of reinstalling Windows 10. With Windows 10, it can take from a day to 14 hours. It can take 12 to 14 hours. It's incredibly long. So what I used to do when I was on Windows 10 is when I wanted to reinstall the computer or reinstall the OS, I'd have to go to bed, and I'd do it when I go to bed, and hopefully in the morning. It might have been done in the morning, so that's kind of excessive. I mean, what could possibly take so long? Partially why it takes so long to reset is because also then all these little dump files of all the errors you've had with Windows 10, all that gets uploaded to Microsoft's cloud. Also, some other telemetry that's just been kicking around hasn't been uploaded yet. All that gets uploaded to Microsoft's cloud too. So the install and reset gets half marks there. Well, I mean, I can't even give it half marks because it just takes so long. 2 out of 10 because it doesn't take 2 whole days. That's a plus there. User control. Now this one here is a bit more important of an operating system. It's the amount of control you have over an operating system. Now the control over Windows 10, over Windows 7, I mean, you do have quite a bit of control, but you don't have the same granular control that you would have over something like Linux. So marks definitely get knocked for that, because there is some folders, like if we take a look a second here. So we're gonna go to our C drive, local C, and then we're gonna go to Windows, and then you can see here that there's actually some hidden folders, and inside here there's like more empty stuff, so the stuff we can't see. There's some folders that's kind of difficult to get access to, and some that you just out where it can't. But there's not that much you could really complain about really for user control. It's because you have everything you need you can do. Now Windows 10, if you open up Task Manager, and by default it's gonna look like this. You're gonna thinking, oh, I've only got a little notepad going on. Nothing serious here. But if you click that more details button, there's more to the story. Here we can see we've got a whole ton of crap going on here. We got Cortana going on here, no matter what you do. Which I actually did a video on that. If you want, there's a link in the description to check the full video on that out. Basically, you can delete Cortana, you can, but there's a little string attached, and basically, when you delete Cortana, and Cortana's bye-bye, and she's not pestering you, then your start menu won't work. So it's kind of, you gotta weigh the balance. What's more important? You can see those whole ton of stuff here, like FUB tracking. McAfee actually is going, even though I uninstalled McAfee, and we all are wondering why our Windows 10s are so slow. Done my best to see what I can do to delete it. I think it's in a hidden folder somewhere, is my opinion. Troubleshooting with Microsoft is kind of like trying to fix a bridge with duct tape. The duct tape might hold for a couple seconds, but if you put any of the workload on it, oh boy, the duct tape is gonna fall off. Let's say you do actually get a good solid fix. You repair that bridge with some bricks, and then you got someone coming along ripping all those bricks out. Actually, after some updates, sometimes Windows 10, like some features just also get wrecked. For example, Call of Duty 4 Modern Warfare used to work on my Windows 10. An update came, and after that update, I couldn't play Call of Duty 4. There's like tons of guys that actually say, yeah, you can disable that telemetry, all that good stuff. And I have been able to disable some of it, but then as soon as an update comes, it just gets reset. So it's a never-ending battle. So let's grade it 5 out of 10. That seems fair, because there are some important aspects that you should have access to that you can't have access to on Windows 10. Number 5, internet. And internet is a bit more of an important one, and that's because, like, stockbrokers, for example, YouTube creators, all those, they need internet access to find their day-to-day life. So internet is an important one. Windows 7 for internet, no complaints whatsoever. We haven't had, like, it seems fast, seems reliable, no trouble, no telemetry going on or anything like that. And honestly, we haven't had much, like, buffering for YouTubing, so 10 out of 10. No complaints whatsoever for the internet on Windows 10. On Windows 7, I mean. with Windows 10 Internet, there's actually a few interesting, fun things that you can do with it. So if we're going to go to settings a second here, now the one you really want to go to is, I think it's privacy, I believe it is. Then when you want to go, no, wrong. You want to go to network and internet. Click that big green button. Then you want to go data usage. Click that button there. And now, this is where things get interesting. Click view usage details. So I have not even used this for much internet in the past month, because since then I've gone over to Windows 7 and I've also gone over to Linux. But you can see that the system here is taking up more internet than the actual browsing. That means that Microsoft's telemetry, where they get all your data that they sell to Facebook and whatnot, that's what's taking up your internet. So it's taking up even more than your actual browsing. So that alone is pretty extreme. I mean, that's a ton of telemetry. Almost a gigabyte, and I've even done barely anything. I've only got, 42 megabytes of internet surfing? That's a lot of telemetry. Also, an interesting thing we can do, click on that, go to resource monitor. From there, this is where things get fun. Now, time for a field trip. We're going to connect to the Wi-Fi. We're going to connect to the internet, and now just what? Now you see that network button? Nothing going on with that network. As soon as we connect, we're getting about a megabyte per second. We are getting a megabyte per second of telemetry user here, ladies and gentlemen. Now, if I could actually get a megabyte per second download and upload speed, I would be very happy. I would be seriously impressed. Whoa, it's getting like a solid megabyte per second. That's pretty crazy. Okay, so now it's kind of gone down a little. So it's like got the extreme telemetry all nicely uploaded to Microsoft's cloud here. But what? So we're getting 5 megabytes per second now? Okay, so we've all witnessed this. We're all getting over 5 megabytes per second download speed, which is actually pretty good internet speed. Or that is actually upload Microsoft's cloud. That's a lot of your network. Let's see what leftover juices we have to actually do some browsing. So let's see how long it takes. Okay, let's do a simple download. Like, let's go with a GIMP download. Now from here, we're still getting our nice, awesome little telemetry going on here. Now let's hit that download. I'm just going to download it directly, and let's see how long this is going to take. Yep, you can save the file there, Windows. Don't worry about it. A grand total of 6 kilobytes per second. Now, there are 1,000 kilobytes in a megabyte. That means we're getting a 1,000th of what Microsoft is using to send up to the cloud. I mean, telemetry, initially I was kind of annoyed about, but Microsoft, seriously, this is a little bit extreme. Like, look at this. The fact, okay, I wonder how fast it is now. Okay, we're getting 14 kilobytes per second. We pay for 1 megabyte per second upload, I believe it is, and 5 megabytes per second download. We're getting with Microsoft here a nice tasty 5 megabytes per second of upload and download. That's just the telemetry. And so all that's left over for us is we're kind of the scavengers here on our own operating system to deal with whatever bandwidth Microsoft isn't using, which is 15 kilobytes per second. Now, the last time I used Windows 10 to do a download, it wasn't quite this bad, but things have definitely degraded. We're just gonna have to cancel this. I want to wait. Before we exit, I just gotta see this. An hour and 17 minutes for 85 megabytes, and yet here Microsoft is getting 5 megabytes per second. If we have 5 megabytes per second, we would be done in a minute if we got that for a download speed. Before, the telemetry usage was bad. It was choking our internet to a crawl. Yes, we still could do some occasional YouTube surfing. This has brought it to a whole new level. Unless I'm reading this data wrong here, but I can see 10 megabytes per second here. So we're getting about now 3 megabytes per second uploading, downloading to Microsoft's cloud. That's all of our data. And then it seems only fair to give Windows 10 a pretty low mark. You can use the internet, or you might not be able to use the internet if you're out in the country. And gamers have been affected by this. It's a widespread problem here. Gamers will be trying to play multiplayer, and all of a sudden they just get really laggy frame rate, and then they get blown to bits in the game. This is a widespread issue here. Performance. Now, since Microsoft seems to push that performance is a new awesome big feature about Windows 10, that's what's pretty high up on the list, because it's what Microsoft seems to be pushing about Windows 10. I actually did do some benchmarkings, because I can't just say, oh, it feels fast, but that's not really scientific. So I actually did some benchmarks, and before I show them, I just want to say I was surprised. benchmark it was based on a game. Now, actually finding a game that worked both across Windows 7 and Windows 10 was more difficult than it might seem. And that is because a lot of older games just don't work on Windows 10, and I mainly like older games. So anyway, but the game that I found that worked across both platforms was Medal of Honor Airborne, which is actually not too old of a game. It was made in 2007 by Electronic Arts, but you can go at full HD, really good texture settings. The important thing is there's a lot of detail put into this game. So you can see the chart here, so the higher the bar, the better. So it's frames per second, and that's basically how smooth the game feels. So the higher the bar, the better. Now, at full HD, so that's 1920 by 1080, that's as big as my monitor can go. At the max texture settings, Windows 7 completed 26.7 frames per second as the average frame rate. Windows 10, on the other hand, came in at 25 and fell behind a little bit at 25.2 frames per second average frame rate. Windows 7 for the minimum frame rate was 21.2, so it didn't dip below 21.2 frames per second on Windows 7, and on Windows 10 it went as low as 20.5 frames per second for the minimum. Though for the maximum frame rate on Windows 7 went as high as 42.2 frames per second, and the maximum frame rate at Windows 10 came in at 31.1 frames per second for the maximum frame rate. Now, you can see there's a bit of a gap. Windows 7 definitely outperformed Windows 10 here, but the gap doesn't seem like as if it's that much of a difference. But this is where things get interesting. So I lowered the quality down to 720p. So you can see here that Windows 7 broke way ahead of Windows 10 here, sometimes doing twice as much frames per second here. So the average frame rate for Windows 7 came in at, for 720p, again, full texture settings as high as they could crank them, came in at 68.2 frames per second, whereas Windows 10 did far worse and went at 48.5 frames per second average. The minimum frame rate for Windows 7 did not even go below 60, it came in at 60.8 frames per second, and the minimum frame rate for Windows 10 dropped as low as 29.6 frames per second. The maximum frame rate for Windows 7 was 91.8 spike. That's a pretty big spike, and the maximum frame rate for Windows 10 did not even come to full 60 frames per second. It came in at a measly 59.9 frames per second. Am I saying that this applies to all games? No. Some games, I'm sure that there's actually a lot of games that are going to run better on Windows 10 than on Windows 7. But the fact that Windows 7 is even comparable and even does better for some games on Windows 10, that's pretty important to me. So for performance, since Windows 10 was supposed to be the best and Windows 7 just beat it, definitely gets a 10 out of 10. It's the champ. Windows 10, on the other hand, the fact that it was outperformed and sometimes performed twice as poorly as Windows 7 gives it a 5. Half the mark because it performed half as good. Now, updates. Now, updates for Windows 7, we're going to have to knock off a few marks there. And that is because you're not going to get your updates, essential security patches out there as soon as possible. Because as we saw through the whole WannaCard virus, that the patch for Windows 7 came out after the patch for Windows 10 did. So it took quite a bit for the patch to actually get there. That's because Microsoft's main focus now is Windows 10, not Windows 7. So you might not get an important update when you should. So we're going to have to knock off 3 marks knocked off there. You do, if it's a pretty widespread problem, you're probably going to get a good update for it. But it's going to take some time. And Windows 10 updates. When I was trying to boot this computer up just to do this video, it was actually trying to update. But I have adapted to a pattern with Windows 10. As soon as before I shut it down, I disable Wi-Fi. Always do that. If I don't, I'm going to be kicking myself the next day because some forced updates are going to probably be coming at the worst possible time. Windows definitely could be a bit less obnoxious about how they update. For example, I was actually trying to edit a video, and then all of a sudden, the frame rate just goes all haywire. Oh, that explains it. Windows Update. If they'd at least tell me when the updates are actually happening, this way I can know when it's a good time to schedule downloads. The user shouldn't have to schedule downloads around the updates. The updates should schedule themselves around the user. Sometimes you do have the ability to click that shut down button without updating, but most times you're forced to either go shut down an update and restart an update. 2 great options. And of course, there's one option that Microsoft will never control, and that's the ability to yank the power cord. I like how one guy on Facebook said that when Windows 10 updates for me, I just go to bed and just let it finish. I kind of like that philosophy, so I can just be like, just chilling out at work, and then my boss is gonna come in and he's gonna be about to blow his top. I'm gonna go, whoa, boss, updating. I can't do any work now. So it's not just us that are having the issues with these updates. So it's a widespread problem. So it would rank even worse than Windows 7. Now, compatibility. The reason compatibility is pretty high up on the list is because compatibility is pretty important in an operating system. Because, for example, if you were a movie editor or something like that, you would need an operating system that supports your video editing software. So something like Adobe Premiere. So compatibility is pretty important. Now, compatibility on Windows 7, I've had any issues. In fact, some programs compiled for Windows 10 seem to work just fine on Windows 7 as well. So 10 out of 10 for compatibility. For example, on Windows 7, Age of Empires 2, all the way back from 1997 when it was compiled, still works on Windows 7. So that game's like almost 20 years old, and today it still works. So Windows 10 loses 2 marks there because your older legacy games are more than likely not going to work on Windows 10. So we're going to give it an 8 out of 10 for that point. And if you're wondering what's going on with my hair, do a quick second there. Well, I just got my hair cut by my mom's. Now, number 9 is security. Now, security is the second most important element of an operating system, because if your operating system is not secure, it doesn't matter if you're making super awesome programs, because someone could easily steal them. Now, security also falls right straight into privacy. So the security for Windows 7, I've not had an issue. My dad has not had an issue since he switched back. And since the beginning, since when it first came out, Dad has not actually had any complaints about it. But we are going to have to knock off a few points here, and that is because you're not going to get important security patches. So, for example, the WannaCry virus out there as ASAP. You're not going to get them as fast as Windows 10 will get them. And that's because with what happened with the whole WannaCry thing is Microsoft pushed the update for Windows 10, and then they weren't pushing it out for older operating systems like Windows 7 and XP. But eventually, people complained enough, Microsoft listened, and then finally they did push it out. So we're going to have to knock out, that's worth 3 marks there, because the updates are important. It is important if you're using it for internet. But what I would suggest is don't use Windows 7 for banking and stuff. I would suggest using it as a video editing, gaming platform, stuff like that. But super important banking stuff, that's actually what my dad uses Linux for. Let's start with Microsoft's privacy policy here. Let's see what Microsoft has to say about your privacy and security in Windows 10. And I've taken the liberty of reading through most of it and just highlighting what I thought sounded kind of special. So we start off with saying Microsoft collects data to operate effectively, blah, blah, blah. So what kind of data are we getting here? Whenever you, administrator, your organization's licensing account, submit a search query to Bing, okay, that's understandable. Of course, Google does that too. They remember what you search. Register for a Microsoft event. Now here's an interesting one. Speak a voice command to Cortana. We collect your first name and last name, email address, postal address, phone number, and other similar contact data. Credentials. We collect passwords, password hints, and similar security information used for authentication and account access. If they're saying they store all of that in the cloud, I just have to say that's not a good idea, Microsoft, because if a data leak happened, also thousands of people's accounts would just be dumped. Their passwords would be gone, they would be hacked. Demographic data. We collect data such as your age, gender, country, and preferred language. This one, actually, my jaw dropped on this one. We collect data necessary to provide your payment if you make purchases, such as your payment instrument number, in little brackets, such as a credit card number, and the security code associated with your payment instrument. Now, this is where it starts to get dangerous, because, so, if Microsoft is storing all this on the cloud, I mean, hackers are going to be like, whoa, that's a huge target. If they did hack Microsoft's cloud, that would be a huge nightmare. Credit card numbers would be just flying all over the place. People would have to cancel their credit cards. I don't know. Content. Here's one of my personal favorites. We collect content of your files and communications when necessary to provide you with the products you use. For example, if you transmit a file using Skype to another Skype user, we need to collect the content of that file to display it to you and the other user as you direct. If you receive an email using Outlook.com, we need to collect the content of that email to deliver it to your inbox, display it to you, enable you to reply to it, and store it for you until you choose to delete it. Other data we collect to provide communication services to you include the text or content of an instant message, audio or video recording of a video message, and audio recording and transcript of a voice message you receive or text message you dictate. So this basically means everything inside your email that you send to someone that you want to be private. Microsoft has their grubbies all over, and they say it's because we need to deliver to people. So they've got this excuse here, but what they're basically saying is they're using a lame excuse to say, this is why we need access to your data. How we use personal data. This here is where Microsoft puts bread on its table. Microsoft uses the data we collect for 3 basic purposes, described in more detail below. 1. To operate our business and provide, including improving and personalizing the products we offer. 2. To send communications, including promotional communications. And 3. To show advertising, whether in our own products supported by advertising like MSN or Bing, or products offered in third parties. Those are the dollar signs right there. So this means Microsoft takes your little data, takes a look at how much you use certain products, such as, I don't know, like maybe if you do programming, maybe if you do a lot of Facebooking, then it takes all that and it just starts saying, goes to any third party and say, hey, I have some data, you could probably use this. How much are you going to give me for that? Then they sell it to them, and that's basically. Now this one here, I didn't really find too much of a security threat. I just thought that this would be kind of funny if it actually happened. Communications. We use data to collect, to communicate with you, and personalize your communications with you. For example, we may contact you by phone or email or other means to inform you when a subscription is ending, discuss your licensing account, let you know when security updates are available, remind you about items left in your online shopping basket, update you or inquire about a service or repair request, invite you to participate in a survey, or tell you that you need to take action to keep your account active. Can you imagine that? That would actually be kind of funny if Microsoft just goes randomly calling people. Hello, your Office 365 account is ending soon. You're gonna have to update that. That would be incredibly annoying. Now this here is where Microsoft kind of lets on who exactly is getting this data. We may share data we collect with third parties such as Oath, AppNexus, or Facebook. See below. Facebook is getting your data. I mean, it's not as if Facebook doesn't already have enough of data. They already know your date of birth and all that good stuff. But no, Facebook's getting even more data to provide even more relevant ads to get Microsoft even more money. Advertisers may choose to place our web beacons on their sites in order to allow Microsoft to collect information on the site such as activities, purchases, and visits. So now, if you're browsing on Windows 10, just a little word of advice, it's not secret what you're doing if you're browsing on Windows 10. And that's about as far as I'm going to go through this thing. Of course, the actual size of this giant privacy policy is way bigger than that. There's a link in the description to that if you want to check out the whole thing. You could probably get a couple laughs out of it. It's kind of funny if you actually think about it. And yeah, most people are just okay with all that data going up to Microsoft. But in my opinion, a phone, yeah, of course a phone. Have all the data you want with a phone. I mean, all you're doing is really calling. A PC, a computer, should be private because that's where you actually do your work. That's where you do programming. That's where you typically do banking, stock traders. That's where they're all working. Now, despite the fact that Microsoft might leak your data to some random hacker if a hack did happen, and then you could potentially have your credit card in the hands of a hacker, there are a lot more alarming issues at hand. One of them is the app installer, which is Microsoft's verified little app installer that basically so that you can go around online or at Microsoft Store and install apps without having to go to any other websites. But recently, Microsoft actually did put out a fix to fix a hack in it. So some hackers basically hacked the system so that they were pushing out, without anybody's permission, these little viruses. And I actually did get one of those. So I know I was doing nothing bad. I was just minding my own business. The little Windows Defender pops up and just says, hey, you got a virus. Now, if Windows Defender says there's something wrong, it doesn't mean it's just something wrong. It means your whole OS is in danger. So I tracked down where the malware came from, and turns out, yeah, it came from the app installer. And I literally was doing nothing. I was just editing the preferences to get, because I was reinstalling Windows 10 because, well, that was again another glitch. I didn't have to do anything to get a virus, and it was force downloaded. So it's safe to say a flunk. Number 10, stability. Now, stability. This is what makes or breaks an operating system. If your operating system, like if you're doing banking on that, or for example, stock traders, like stuff like that, they need a stable operating system because if all of a sudden it's in the middle of a Windows, let's not mention any names, Windows 10 update, and they need to have their operating system up and running before the stock market opens, because otherwise they can miss out on literally millions of dollars of deals. Windows 7, for stability, I've had not one issue. So, 10 out of 10, no complaints here. Dad hasn't had any issues either, and even before, like when he just came out with Windows 7, he didn't have any issues then. Windows 10 stability, it's starting to get comparable to that of Windows Me. My dad used to tell me horror stories of how bad Windows Me really was, and now I've got a few saved up of my own to tell my geeky kids someday. For example, one time my folders just completely locked up, couldn't do any more programming in those folders. Another time was with Dad's computer, that with one of Dad's Windows 10. Also, he goes to boot up and it won't boot. Classic blue screen of death, of course. Another time was that after an update, what happened was after the update, then the user interface for booting up it looked like DOS, MS-DOS. Oh boy, might as well install MS-DOS if that's what it looks like then. So what I did to fix that, one of his Windows 10s was he set everything back to factory, but then a year later, it completely froze up again. So he reset it back to factory, and you can probably guess what happened next, is it completely froze up again, and that's when Dad ripped his hair out, and he decided, this was a war, we're not going to win anymore. And he switched to Linux, so, hey, win, happy here. But maybe we're just all unique in this case. Like maybe my Windows 10, the start menu on it was a completely unique case. Like green screen of death. I actually get a green screen of death. Like also just freeze up, go green a second, and then flip back. Maybe that's just unique. Maybe I just have a bad version of Windows 10. Maybe my dad has 3 bad versions of Windows 10. Nope. No, that's definitely not the case here. So this here is a screenshot I took from the Windows 10 Facebook page here. Or Facebook group actually, and oh boy, morning guys, please help. I am trying to install Windows 10, but says select the driver to install, but it shows no drivers. Another one, well maybe that's just one guy. Hey, hello, I brought a tablet with Windows 10. I can't manage to fix the battery issue. Tries to only 82%. Windows Store is not opening / running. It says Windows Store cache may be damaged. How can I fix it? Hello guys, facing one issue. Another issue right there. Hello guys, I'm trying to find a very lightweight browser. Okay, so here legit post, no problem there. Solid post, no issues there. Again, solid post. Windows 10 is constantly forcing me to reset my dark theme. Constantly. Big bold letters, you can tell this guy's frustrated. Now after last update, it has broken the dark theme so that my Explorer folders are all glaring white. I can't begin to explain how infuriating this is to deal with. It's an amateur hour problem and it needs to be fixed. So lame. Now this guy here is just his problem here. Hey guys, I'm trying to install animation software. You just need DirectX for that guy. Windows 10 installing updates. Hello, random PC starts. Anyone else having random setting starts with no blue screen? Check your graphics and sound card. Okay, so he's offering fix. Hi, newbie to Windows skip straight ahead. Windows 10 insider here. Can I expect bugs? I'd say you can safely expect some bugs there. How Windows 10 Kiko? Don't know what he's talking about. How to check any missing files, errors in Windows OS. Looks like he's got some problems too. My icons have disappeared from my desktop. And then someone commented said, mine does it now and again. It usually has to do with Windows caching. Great time to restart an update without, and then swear word, warning, right in the middle of doing a client's tax return. I've been waiting for an hour to finish. Buying something different as soon as the store is open tomorrow morning. Windows 10 is the worst thing that's happened to this business. And this is exactly what I'm talking about here. Business owners are being hit by this because they don't. This fellow here needs this client's tax return. He needs it done today, not whenever Windows 10 feels like it's a good time for him. So that's as far as I recorded on the web page. If you guys want to check out some of this, Facebook page is Windows 10. That's all the name is. So Windows 10, a stable OS? No. 0 out of 0 for that. So let's tally up the total scores here. So let's start with Windows 7. So Windows 7 scores in at a total of 8.7 out of 10. So in other words, that's what would that be? 87%. 87%. That's a pretty good grade in my books. And Windows 10, everything said and done. For a second there, I almost thought that was an 8, but then I realized, no, that was definitely 2 zeros. So Windows clocks in at a total of 4.7 out of 10. In other words, that would be, let's just scroll out a second here, that would be 47%. And any of you guys in high school, we all know that you need at least 50% to pass math class. So by now, you might be asking yourself, hold on a second. So if Windows 10 really is that bad, if this is a widespread problem and people are having issue after issue with it, then why doesn't Microsoft just sell Windows 7? Good question. Microsoft is no longer interested in making the best operating system. They're interested more in your pocket. More specifically, the dollars inside your pocket. Microsoft has found that it's an extremely lucrative business to sell data to a third party, such as Facebook. And that's why Microsoft's stock just keeps rising and rising and rising, because the shareholders are happy because the business is making money. They found that it's incredibly lucrative to sell your data to other people. Now this here is nothing new. Browsers do it all the time. Google search engine is always telemetry there. But Windows 10 has something special with it, and that's because the PC is the workstation. That's where you do all your banking, all your important stuff there, the important stuff that you don't want people to see. Because Microsoft has access to this data, they can sell it for exclusive prices because they're pretty much the only ones that have access to this data. That's also why they're no longer selling Windows 10 as a product. They're more selling it now as a service instead, because this way it's a service to help collect your data so that they can sell. But then what does all this mean? I mean, all this here is just numbers at the end of the day. What choice do we really have here? Well, what I would say is if you are on Windows 7, you hold on to that. I would definitely wait until something better. Like I wait until maybe like Windows 11 if that ever comes out. Or I know that there's talk that Microsoft's working on Windows Core or S or something. I'd wait for that one to come out and take a look at it first before upgrading. Now, if you come across a Windows 7 Pro or Home Disk in a store, I'd recommend definitely picking it up. And even if you don't necessarily want Windows 7, I definitely recommend picking it up anyway, because I'd definitely buy it from you. Now, if you have already upgraded from Windows 7 to Windows 10, within the first 3 months of Windows 10 usage from there, you can actually downgrade back to Windows 7, which there's a lot of videos on that. If you want a video on that, just let me know in the comment section below, and then I'll see what I can do about making a video on that. Now, in the event that you do not have access to Windows 7, and no matter what you've tried, you can't get your hands onto it, what I would recommend is just picking up a hard drive for $100, installing something like Linux Mint on that, and then for that, I'd do if I were banking, I'd do my banking on that. Because like we saw in the Microsoft's privacy policy, they record stuff such as, they've actually said that they could record keystrokes. They're recording your credit card numbers. I wouldn't do any online financing at all with Windows 10. I just don't trust it. And if you're on Windows 7, your security might be a little bit less, again, because of important security patches. But the important thing is, don't go in back alleys if you don't want to get mugged. That's the important thing. So stay clear of the shady paths and just stick to the highway, and you'll be pretty safe. But of course, most of this here is just my opinion, but the numbers don't lie. Like the benchmarks, it's kind of hard to argue with facts. And again, with the benchmarks, I'm not saying that all games are going to run better on Windows 7 than on Windows 10. I'm sure that there are some newer games that will run better on Windows 10 vs Windows 7. That said, if you guys have done any benchmarks with Windows 7 or 10, just let me know that down in the comment section. That'd be real fun to hear why. Of course, if you have a different opinion of if you like Windows 10 better or maybe you like Windows 7 better, leave that down in the comment section too. And thank you for watching and thank you for subscribing. So recently we just actually hit 300 subscribers, which to some might not seem like a lot, but to us, we value every single subscriber. 300 is kind of like a milestone to us. So thank you guys so much for subscribing. We really do appreciate every single subscriber. That's it. I'll see you in the next video. Marty out.